Welcome to the Grand Compendium. Today I have two horror stories for you. The first is a sequel to a story I read a couple weeks ago about a terrible DMPC. I wish I knew about it then, because I would have done both in the same video, but it is what it is. Our second story is of a player's very first D&D group, and how they ended up cutting ties with those people. Without further ado, let us begin. Our first story is titled, The Worst DM is Also the Worst Player. TLDR at the end. Part 2 of the Echo Saga. So here it is, the long-awaited follow-up story of Echo, our terrible DM. I'll link the previous story just below for context, but the TLDR is Echo, the DMPC, is literally a super god, and we spend 9 IRL months being his lackeys and not playing the module. Okay, so after that awful campaign came to an end, we stopped playing D&D altogether for about a year. That was until my friend moved close to us and asked if we would be interested in starting a new D&D campaign with him as the DM. We'd heard from other friends that he was a great DM, so we were all excited to get started. The cast are as follows, with some previous players not returning. Me playing Eileen, an elf bloodhunter/ranger. Big Tat playing Yuna, a big blue sexy Goliath barbarian. Paladin from previous game, now playing Akon, a fighter Yuan-Ti. And finally Echo, playing Sparky, a Twilight cleric. His choice of class will become important later. So we start off the adventure, and for the first few weeks everything goes well. Until it doesn't. Sparky, for some reason, despite being a good aligned character, insists on picking fights with guards when he doesn't get his way, freeing trapped angry polar bears, and being surprised when they attack, and just generally being very antagonistic towards things he doesn't like. All these actions have a roll-on effect as we are a group. We try to have a chat with him about it, and his behavior improves, but not for long. His character, for some context, was just all over the place in general. He kept on asking the DM to make sanity checks, even though that wasn't a mechanic we were using, and then using his results as an excuse for whatever nonsense he was up to. And then there was his class. Now, spoilers for Rime of the Frost Maiden here, so skip to the next part if you want to avoid any spoilers. We were infiltrating a Duergar stronghold in the mountains, and Sparky kept on insisting we went a certain route, even though, once again as a party, we had decided to go another. He was huffy, but relented. When we got ambushed by the Duergar, Sparky made a comment like, "Shoulda listened to me." He went into initiative and started fighting, but when it came to the Duergar's turns, they went invisible and got the upper hand. That's when Sparky, with a massive grin on his face, cast Fairy Fire, but the DM had other plans. He then describes the Duergar running away, leaving us to chase after them, right into a massive trap. We ended the session there, and Sparky made a comment about, "That's not what was meant to happen there." After he left, me and the DM sat and discussed his behavior, and why he was so tilted by some encounters we've had. It was then that the DM dropped the bombshell. Sparky had read the module and was trying to bet the game. It all suddenly made sense. His class choice directly countered a lot of the enemy types in the module, his constant forcing us in certain directions to avoid traps and ambushes, and the way he would insist on interacting with NPCs, only to be disappointed with the outcome he got. I was annoyed. What's the point if you're just going to cheat and try to win the game while making it miserable for the rest of us? The DM assured me he had a plan, and that Sparky was not going to get the module as written because he had tailored it to our way of playing and our characters' backstories. And sure enough, as the weeks went on, Sparky's frustrations became more and more apparent as things he expected to happen didn't. Personally, I was loving it. Our DM had obviously put in a lot of time and effort to make the story connected to our characters, rather than just as written. But it all came to a head during an encounter that once again the party wanted to deal with one way, and Sparky decided to deal with his way. So, picture this. You've just rocked up to a suspected hag's cave in an isolated icy mountain. Outside, you see the remains of the previous adventuring party who dared try and enter, smeared all over the ice. You decide to send the stealthiest character in to have a snoop around before charging in. While inside, you find more humanoid remains, a butcher room, and the most disturbing thing, a 30-foot undead frost giant entombed in ice. You report back to the rest of your group, and decide that stealth is very much the correct decision. Now, does your cleric A, follow the plan and help your characters stealth their way in, B, ask their god for guidance before blessing your fellow party members, or C, ignore all the other party members, run up to the entrance of the cave, and shout at the top of their lungs, "Hello, you in the cave?" If you guess C, you're correct. We all asked the DM if there was any way to stop this, but unfortunately Sparky had made it clear that he had ran ahead. So, out comes the 30-foot undead frost giant, and initiative starts. I rolled super high and went first. I turn to the DM and say, I use the dash action and use my full movement to get away from Sparky, because let's be honest here, there's no way my character would put her life on the line for him, after repeatedly not working with the team and putting our lives in danger. As she runs away, you hear her cursing your name, Sparky, and she gives you the finger. He was stunned, and I was done. The other two players love a fight though, so we did end up fighting the undead frost giant, and I got the killing blow from a distance using my bow. Sparky spent the whole combat unconscious, as right after I went, it was the frost giant's turn, and he used all 3 of his attacks to turn Sparky into Twilight Paste. Very satisfying. After the session, we all had a chat with Sparky, telling him it's maybe best he retire the character, as clearly he wasn't working. But in the case with most of these D&D horror stories, the trash took itself out. He permanently stepped away from the group. After a few weeks, we brought in a new player, and she has been the best addition to the team ever. So, happy ending. TLDR. So yeah, I didn't think it was possible for Echo to be a worse player than a DM, but I was wrong. He cheated, he didn't work with the group, and he tried to outsmart our DM and win D&D. There is one more horror story involving Echo that's probably the worst offense of all, but this story is already long enough, so I'll save it for another day. End of story. Well, at least we have a happy ending this time. Echo clearly just doesn't understand the concept of a team game, and is just more focused on experiencing what winning in D&D is like. Though that really isn't a thing. The closest thing to it is having fun. I know that sounds cheesy, but I mean it is a game, and that's usually the goal of most games. What Echo is doing, unfortunately, has the opposite effect on groups, and makes all the players feel like they lost the game. Metagaming might be the saddest form of cheating there is. Lying about your dice rolls is one thing, but using information your character doesn't have just to get the edge over your DM is kind of pathetic, especially since you're still bound by the randomness of the dice, and you never know what might happen. But that's all for this first story. OP mentioned that they might have a third part. As of around the time of me actually recording this and uploading, it's definitely been probably over a month since the second post got released. Maybe the third one's out, I don't know. But I wanted to make a video, so here we are. If a third part does come out, it'll be in a video for sure. Anyways, on to the second story. Our second story is titled, My First Ever D&D Group Was a Handful. The anxious person in me has put off writing this story. Sorry if this reads like a long-winded rant. It's sort of catharsis after this roller coaster. This is a long story and covers 4 months and 11 sessions. TLDR, everyone talks, even the DM wasting half the session and spoils everything. Party kills my character, party splits and my 2-week homework is thrown out, party begs for silvery barbs, but says to respect the natural 20 when I get hit in PvP. I try to open up dialogue, and the DM goes full shutdown mode and prevents everyone from talking. I leave, and everybody cuts ties with me. Big sad. Yikes. Context. This happened about a year ago. I had a friend, named Greg, at work, who was playing in a D&D group over Discord. I told him I was super into D&D, and had done years of improv, but have never played. I had bought the PHB, made mock characters, and read the rules, but never had a group to play with. So he said he'd ask the DM if I could join his group, as they were looking for another player. After some time, I get a friend request from the DM, and we go back and forth with the basics, like no PvP, no stealing within the party, no killing kids. He was running a homebrew campaign that heavily relied on various gods, gaining their favor and enacting their will. I joined into a group of 7, where it was 2 other players' first times ever touching a ttrpg. From the start, sessions really dragged on. I'd say a good half was just chit-chat, and not like background chit-chat or players talking during combat. No, this was like full-on conversation, pausing the session mid-whatever to talk about some random thing. Politics, niche rules, fun facts, or just whatever. The worst part is that the DM was a part of every conversation, so there was no one to stop the 20+ minute convo. Me and Greg would try to get the ball rolling again, but were ignored most times. To make it worse, the DM couldn't keep us secret, and loved gushing about his homebrew world mid-session. All the secrets, all the lore, what's currently happening outside the party, what's going to happen. It took out all the fun of exploring and talking to NPCs for me. There was no reason to seek out secrets when it was all on display. Also from the start, the DM outsourced a lot to me. I assume because I wrote up a crash course for improv used in D&D, as some guys were expressing difficulties role-playing, and he must have liked my writing style. So a lot of the stat blocks, documents, and general creative advice were outsourced to me. Not only that, but I helped the other 2 new players a lot with understanding D&D and the rules, as I was already versed in them. On top of all that, one of the more depressive players was going through some things at the time, and were considering leaving due to him not having fun at the table. I encouraged him to stay, and helped him reframe his disappointment with the game into newfound fun. So with all this investment, I really felt at home and close-knit with the group, and could imagine playing for years. So the first session I played a Warforged bard, and in this setting, Warforged were super mega enslaved. So I wrote a Pinocchio-type backstory where a god came down and blessed my Warforged with free will. So he set off with an oath to free his people and to bring peace to the lands. Unbeknownst to me, the party was some of these slavers, and had a base full of Warforged slaves soulbound to the property. The way the party justified this was because all the robot staff were all bloodthirsty due to all their pent-up rage for being enslaved for literal eons, swearing to end all existence once freed. Once finished with any tasks, they would self-destruct, and their souls couldn't leave the mansion and would just be reincarnated into another Warforged body on the premises. So after my character finds this out, the DM pretty much sets me up for my backstory, asking how I save my kin. I safely removed the staff robot's head as the DM told me he would survive. I plan to use his head as an abolitionist of sorts, to help emancipate and quell the rage of the machines in a form that wouldn't cause too much violence. I wore him like Mimir from God of War for all of 2 seconds. The party immediately jumped me, removed the head from my possession in a scuffle, killing him and my character. They stated it was because, well, they might rise up, or we thought it might take over your character, and stating, that was a pretty bad idea, those things hate us. I was kind of butthurt and told them my character was literally made for the story arc, but nothing came of it, and not wanting to cause a scene on my third session, I gritted my teeth and went along with it. My second character wasn't all that noteworthy. He was a warlock all about the gods, and swore an oath to free his people and bring peace to the lands. Very different from my first character. But ended up dying 4 sessions in due to a cursed sword, a dead man's curse set to go if someone picked it up after killing the owner. The DM offered to revive my character if I basically became a thrall for the BBG, the god of death and evil and killing puppies or whatever. I said nah, as I wanted my character to be good, and made a third and final character. I really dug deep into my creative side and made what I believe was my best character ever. A satyr dance bard / monk. Story-wise, he had lots of room for the DM to branch off stories, characters, and settings, and the DM agreed, praising it, saying it was one of the best backstories he's ever received as a DM. As a treat for basically making my magnum opus, I kinda min-maxed the shit out of him. I took silvery barbs for the party and mirror image for some up-close survivability. Almost immediately after my satyr joining, the party split. One player, Albert, went off to form diplomatic relations, as the rest of the party went dungeon delving. So the sessions were dragged on even more. During this time, Albert learned the town he was trying to form relations with had been taken over by the BBG and was holding all the children hostage, which was the big cliffhanger to end that session. The DM told us for homework, we had to pick from homebrewed squadrons to control that would help Albert take back the city. I was in love with this idea and was appointed battle master by the DM, tasked with coming up with the battle strategy. I spent the 2-week break researching battle tactics and formations, while coming up with contingencies and strats to safely extract the children. I sent in my battle plan to the DM to see if it fits his vision and world, and he approved and complimented my writing again. I was pumped for the session. Come game time, we each take control of our NPC commanders. One took control of a village elder, while the final took up the role as the village's caregiver. We quickly went over the plan I had created, and Albert thought to send in the caregiver to inform the eldest child of the plan and to cause a distraction as we marched our troops. Here's where the bullshit starts to happen. It turns out the caregiver was a spy and pretty much sold us out. She returns to the group, and the enemy starts marching their troops over, immediately moving 150 plus feet at a time. At this point, we still weren't allowed to take control of our squads, so I can't enact any of my plans. Albert quickly ran over to the bridge the enemy was crossing, and attempted to use 3rd level tidal wave to wash the army off, but the DM declared the commander specifically was counterspelling it, while over 60 plus feet away. I pointed out that he couldn't, to which the DM quickly swapped to saying, "No, the commander is channeling through the spy caregiver to cast it," as she was within 60 feet. Pretty BS if you ask me, but I begrudgingly ran with it. After the counterspell, the enemy army moves again, another 150 feet, right in front of our army. This initiated combat, and finally we were allowed to take control of our squads. The caregiver and the elder were now considered enemies, and played as such. Rules lawyering and rewriting what went down, all in their favor. They quickly went from cooperative and competitive, and soured the party dynamic for me. I don't know if I was already frustrated, but it felt like time slowed down. Combat was doubly long this time around, mixed with the arguing and now rolling to see if an entire army could kill one person each round, rolling for each combatant. Not only that, my army was locked and not able to do anything. My army was at every disadvantage. No spells, only once a day homebrewed, very weak abilities, and the enemy having an option for everything we did. This didn't make combat that fun or fast for me, and felt like the DM living out a power fantasy through PvP and a one-sided battle. After the session, I reached out to the DM and told him I was pretty dejected about my plans not all being considered, telling him I would have loved to have my plan fall I would have loved to have my plan fail in action, but the army was in our faces before I even had a chance to do anything. And went on to express my soured experience with PvP. The DM replied, stating, the enemy commander is aggressive, why wouldn't he just run out immediately? Continuing on to say, it's not PvP, it's players controlling enemies to fight you, so it's not the same. This back and forth between me and him, me explaining my disappointment with my effort being thrown out, and him debating me logically that it's a game and the army will do what he wants, went on for a few days. I couldn't get him to quite see how this made me feel, as he felt that it was justified with his commander taking these actions. I mean, why have me do the prep if you already know whatever I come up with will be thrown out? In the dungeon, the party, minus Albert, was ambushed by a large group of homebrewed vampires. We were quite outmatched in numbers and number of attacks, as each enemy had multi-attack. More often than not, the vampires would roll nat 20s against us, while we rolled nat 1s. At the time, we misunderstood Silvery Barbs, and used it on any rolls, not just successes, using it pretty much every time the critical 1s and 20s came out. Thankfully, I thought ahead and casted Mirror Image on myself, dodging most attacks. While I had Mirror Image up, I was hit with a nat 20. From my understanding of Mirror Image, all successful attacks target one of the clones because I rolled successfully. I argued my case, and the DM allowed my understanding. Later on, we came across a zombified character that was previously played by Albert, though this version of the character was obviously an evil boss controlled by Albert. Again, the same rules lawyering came out for the majority of combat, leading up to my turn to get hit. I was feared and forced to use all my movement to run away or until I lost line of sight. As a dance bard / monk who uses nothing but melee and couldn't look at the source of fear made me pretty much useless. As I was cowering, Albert's boss character poked his head around the corner and used 3 of his multi-attacks to hit me, 2 missing my AC with the last coming up as a nat 20. Albert shouted something about it not being fair because he wasn't able to hit me with a nat 20, and asked DM to overturn my ruling. The DM quite hesitantly left it to the group to decide. I obviously voted no, but the rest of the group started calling it overpowered, and theorizing on monsters or bosses using mirror images, and spamming it. I was a minority in the landslide of a vote, and the rule was overturned. I should also point out here, I was only told of the homebrew setting and the house rules mentioned above. Throughout the campaign, players and the DM would bring up homebrewed rules whenever it convenienced them, which to me honestly felt like moving the goalpost at every opportunity. After the session, I felt only what I could describe as deflated. I again reached out to the DM and asked about and questioned his previous ruling. Reiterated my disdain for PvP, and said if we were going to keep it, I'd like concrete rules to follow, so we don't argue anymore. He told me to write something up and send it to the group and have them vote again. He went on to say he wanted to be a neutral party, and gave no opinion, and that he already felt like he made a mistake ruling in my favor the first time. I sent out my prepared message to the group chat, explaining why I wanted a re-vote and with suggestions. Again, they all voted against all polls, saying, enemies might use it, we don't argue at all in PvP, and natural 20/1 should be respected and not changed at all. Frustrated, I brought up the session where I used all my spell slots to save their characters from all the nat 1s and 20s, stating they begged and pleaded for me to use Silvery Barbs every crit that was rolled. Pointed out that D&D has multiple ways of stopping nat 20s, and negating even rolling in general, and that monster spamming spells you don't like is no fault of mine, but is the DM's poor game design choices, if that comes to be. Logically, I felt I was making good points, but at the time I didn't know how to tell them this was impacting my fun in a way that they could understand. I really felt like I was open and transparent about how I felt, but they couldn't grasp that. Players and the DM quickly pointed out they used the rules as suggestions. The rule of cool is pretty much the only rule they follow, and really only wanted to make a story. I completely understand wanting to make a story and having different rules for each group, but I was only just informed of this now. I was playing under the assumption that we followed the rules in the books, seeing as how everyone wanted to rules lawyer throughout the campaign thus far. As the discussion went on, 2 players threatened to leave, saying they wanted no part in the game with my suggestions, to which the DM instantly enters panic mode. He shuts down some of my suggestions, states he wasn't really into them anyways, and wants to keep players. He shuts down all communication in the group chat, and leaves it up to another vote, demands all players to privately message him their vote, but he will actually have the deciding vote. Again dejected, I reach out to the DM, and say I think it would be very beneficial that we all as a party have an open dialogue, express our feelings about the matter, and come to a consensus that everyone could agree on. But she pretty much says, "I am the DM, respect me. I don't care how we are doing votes, deal with it. It's a game, you need to grow up and have fun." It takes some time for the DM to count the private votes. I was quite nervous and hoped for the best, thinking I was able to reach these people who I thought were my friends. Then after everybody submits their vote, of course it's another landslide. From this vote I understood that the group really didn't want to acknowledge my dissatisfaction with how they made the game for me, and that no matter how I worded it, they wouldn't understand nor want to understand. So I wrote up a half-hearted, heartfelt goodbye, to which everybody just shrugged and said, "Okay, bye." Almost immediately after I made my decision to leave, I was instantly kicked from the game. I figured since the DM really didn't want to keep players, he'd make the same effort for me. Looking back, it hurt quite a lot that the person I encouraged to stay was the driving voice on the vote and was first to threaten to leave. I even reached out to him and asked if the session went well after all the drama, and he pretty much ghosted me. Greg really tried hard playing devil's advocate, and really didn't want to weigh in on anything. We shared a lot of the same frustrations throughout the sessions, but it really hurt when he didn't want to back me up on anything, seeing as how we were friends before the game. I thought I really bonded with the DM as he complimented a lot of my work, only to backpedal and start shutting down ideas to keep players, but was quick to kick me from the group chat as soon as I decided I was alone. I really had only told my closest friends and family about this whole debacle while it was transpiring. I honestly should have listened to them whenever they told me to leave that group when I ranted about each session. This was really quite traumatizing to me. I really thought that I was friends with all these people, and we had a great time, only for them to ghost me. So yeah, did I overreact, or should I have left the first chance I got? End of story. This group is terrible. From killing OP's first character, to then making decisions that would be harmful for OP knowingly. But I think the DM is also a major problem here. This DM seems like a people pleaser, and would just let their players get away with whatever they wanted, just to avoid a conflict. Especially with the mirror image situation. Also, mirror image isn't that broken of a spell. And OP is right in saying that if every enemy starts using that spell, the issue would be the DM's poor game design. As for, say, the sword that killed OP's second character, I don't know if it was no knowledge that picking it up would kill you, or if it was genuinely just a sudden thing that only the DM knew about. If it's the former, then totally it's OP's fault for what happened. If it's the latter, then the DM is at fault, and made it even worse by saying, "I'll help you, but only if you ruin your character concept." But anyways, I think it's for the best that this player ended up leaving. With that, I hope you have yourselves a good day, and if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. If you're interested in a D&D campaign without any horror, check out our very own 5e actual play series, Heroes of Valeria.